Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining today's workshop. We're so excited to introduce today's workshop, Unlocking Innovation Capital. My name is Anne Magella McKelvey Tate, and I'm the program manager here at the Innovation Cluster. And I'm so excited to have you all with us today. So, for those who may be new to us, the Innovation Cluster is an innovation hub, and we help entrepreneurs across Ontario grow and scale with purpose through mentorship, community, and programs built for real world impact. We greatly appreciate you choosing to be with us today as a part of your journey. Now, on to today's incredible workshop. Today's workshop helps you to discover how to position your business for innovation funding and navigate the path to securing it. In this session with Pocketed, a Deloitte business, you'll learn how funding decisions are made, where to find the right opportunities, and practical strategies to successfully access capital, whether you are a startup or a scaling team. Now, today's speaker, Aria Hahn, is the CTO and co-founder of Pocketed, a Deloitte business that helps startups and growing companies access non-dilutive funding. She has over a decade of experience building and scaling companies across Canada. Aria brings a rare combination of technical depth and practical startup experience. She holds a PhD in bioinformatics and metagenomics, has founded and exited multiple technology companies, and has worked closely with founders across sectors, including digital technology, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and agri-tech. Now, just a few notes before we dive in and I pass it over to Aria. We will be watching the chat throughout the session, so if you've got questions, drop them in and I'll make sure they get to Aria at the end. I will also be dropping a couple of quizzes in the chat shortly as well, and so we will be diving into those. Feel free to turn your cameras on. We really love to see your faces. It makes the workshop a lot more fun and interactive. And then at the end of the workshop, we'll be running a quick poll to hear about your experience. So please stick around and share your feedback. It was really greatly appreciated and helps us improve future sessions. And again, really don't be shy. This is a space to ask questions and swap ideas and learn something you can actually use when the Zoom call ends today. I'll pass it right over to you, Aria. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So excited to be here. So thank you, everybody. And that was such a nice intro. Thank you. And so we founded Pocketed, my co-founder, Brianna Blaney, and I, about 5 years ago now. And it really was born out of the ashes of another business that was kind of killed by COVID and timing. And we were really looking to at first fund ourselves with grants and other opportunities, besides investment capital. And it turned out it was just hard. It was harder than it needed to be. And so hence Pocketed was born. Let's see if I can figure out how to change it. That's not what I want to do. We'll get it working. Okay, great. We're back in business. And so what we're going to cover today are kind of the three pillars, and each one kind of builds on the next. And I want this to be much more of a workshop style than a lecture. I'm an ex-academic, so I do love a good lecture, but feel free to, interrupt and comments and chats, and I'm happy to answer things on the fly, and interruptions are welcome. So yeah, please, if you have things, shout them out. So the first thing I'm going to talk about really is how the government views innovation and funding. Because if you understand that, it's easier to position your own projects and work in that lens that then will be more successful. Second, how to navigate the landscape with confidence and clarity. So I think a lot of things that you learn how to do, once you know how to do them, they kind of feel easy. But before you've started, it feels overwhelming and hard, and you don't know where to go. And so we're going to try to simplify kind of where funding in Canada is and what it's for and how you can use it. And then 3, let's start to develop the strategy that makes sense for your business in particular. So this is meant for you if you're a startup founder, you're building something new, you need capital that doesn't dilute your equity, you're growing and scaling, and you want to fund your innovation without taking on debt or de-risk some projects that seem really cool, but you're not sure if they'll be successful or not. If you're doing R&D or investing in research and you want to offset some costs, hiring and expanding, this is another one for sure. Or you're curious, but you're lost and you don't know where to start. And you're like, maybe I'm not ready now, but I would like to understand where that's coming from. And then if you're innovating daily, so if you haven't, and what I'll say is sometimes, is my voice echoing? I'm in like a closed space. It's usually pretty good for this. We'll see what we can do. Raise my laptop. Okay. Is that better? Oh, okay, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then I can tilt this down so it's like less of a weird. It's good now. I like this comment direction. It's nice. And so if you're innovating daily, lots of times I talk to entrepreneurs and they are innovating all the time and they don't even recognize it. And so that is another piece that I want to make sure you understand. Like often entrepreneurs are doing a lot more innovation than they give themselves credit for. A little bit about me. I'm a PhD in bioinformatics and I'm technical by nature. So by training, probably better. And I have founded and exited a couple of companies. And so the first one I started right out of my PhD with my PhD supervisor, and we built that up over 10 years. And it really got to the point for me where, as the founder that I am, I built that company up as far as I could take it. So we did some really big projects, a lot in mining, so a lot with microbes. And then an opportunity came to exit and it felt like the right fit. And at the same time, I'd kind of started pocketed on the side at the time. And that was really, really growing. And, Brianna, my co-founder, is a fantastic businesswoman. And so that was gaining a lot of traction and usership. And kind of just as that started to really take off as well, Deloitte was interested. And so both of the exits actually for me happened right around the same time. And so I went really from being a founder and running two companies to working at Deloitte. And so that was just over a year ago. And I would say that I'm now feeling semi-adjusted to the new life. And so I actually really love talking to entrepreneurs and hearing about their ideas. And that's kind of a phase in life that really resonates with me and that I'm really excited and to hear more about. And I also know how hard it is. It's really, really hard. And so it's kind of at Deloitte now. I always joke that it's my first job since I worked at Wendy's when I was 15. So really bookended kind of the career with Wendy's drive-through all the way to Deloitte. So entrepreneurship in between. Funding is really hard. There's almost nothing about a business that's easy, running a business that's easy. Rarely I'll meet an entrepreneur who's like, I don't know, it's pretty easy. And I'm always just like, buckle up, because like that is gonna, maybe you're like the exception, but I have not met very many entrepreneurs that have been at it for a long time who say that it's easy. It's really hard. I think another thing that was really surprising for me, especially in my first business, is that I had ideas that once I hit certain milestones, it would get easier. So I had it in my head, once we were making $1 million in revenue, once we had 10 employees, and every single time we would like kind of achieve these milestones, it wasn't easier. I just had different problems. And so I think I became a lot happier in entrepreneurship and in those roles once I realized it was always going to be hard. And so one of the things that is hardest is money. I think keeps most entrepreneurs up at night often. And so here, what I'm hoping to do today is to get people to understand how we might be able to take some of that pressure off with non-dilutive funding or grants. And so really the first step is understanding how the government sees innovation, because if you understand that, it's easier to unlock that government capital. To kind of set the stage here, there's over 5.9 billion available in Canada every year. So a fair bit of funding every single year that goes to businesses in Canada. Right now, there are almost 1,900 programs open today. It's usually right around there. So we say from 1,500 to 2,500 programs are open at any given time. And they come and go. So I always say, and everyone makes fun of me for using this word, but it's actually the right word, like funding is really ephemeral. And so you see these programs open and close, sometimes over 2 weeks, sometimes over a month, sometimes 3 months or 6 months, but they pop up and go away, and you have to stay on top of the opportunities and be a little bit opportunistic. So what innovation means to the government is, first and foremost, I think this is kind of the top one, scientific and technical research and development is kind of the easiest ones for people to understand. It's kind of the classic definition of innovation. So you're developing new knowledge, new products, new processes, or materials that advance technical knowledge. Classic SHRED territory. If you don't know what SHRED is, or SR&ED is how the CRA likes to see it. So if you're talking to the CRA, always call it SR&ED, because if you say SHRED, they get a little huffy sometimes. But everyone actually just calls it SHRED. But it's a tax credit, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that one. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference between grants and tax credits, because I think that's really important. But this is kind of the classical innovation. There's also process innovation. And I think these are some of the other ones where people don't understand how much innovating they're doing. So if you're just doing new ways of doing things, automation, digital transformation, efficiency improvements at scale, that is innovation. Market innovation, when you're entering new markets and new ways, you're exporting Canadian solutions abroad, you're building internationally competitive businesses or international collaborations. This is market innovation. It's really important to think about yourself innovating in these spaces as well. And there's also social and environmental innovation. And so clean tech can fall into scientific R&D. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes these sustainability initiatives are not necessarily R&D, but they're still very important. So for example, one of my friends runs a food truck. It's really fun to have a friend with a food truck, by the way, highly recommend. And we got him a sustainability grant because he started a composting program for food trucks in the area. And so he's not creating scientific knowledge or developing something new. Composting exists, but he was able to create a sustainability initiative that could then fund grants, or be funded by grants. And so it's just kind of good to have these broader definitions in your head, and also to recognize and name some of the things that you're probably doing that are really innovative that you don't even see as your core innovation. So, to summarize here, this whole point, innovation doesn't always mean something inventing something brand new. It could be improvement and adaptation and scaling. Only tech companies qualify? No. So that's the other thing, is that the government, in terms of non-dilutive funding, it's much more important about what you're doing and how you're doing it than the industry of your business. And so we often get founders that come in and say, hi, I am a cosmetics company. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a life sciences company. They say, oh yeah, but funding is really for tech companies. I promise you the government does not care what your business does in terms of industry. They care much more about the activities and projects and how you're doing it in terms of funding. So if you're manufacturing, your life sciences, you have services, your agri-tech, all of these things are going to be eligible. And I'm going to show you some examples of tech companies, but also services companies that have successfully accessed grants. Definitely grants and tax credits are not just for big companies with R&D labs. And again, the government doesn't really fund industries as such. They fund projects and activities. And so there are industry-specific programs for sure, but there are many that are industry agnostic. And you need grant writers to succeed. I mean, we say Many programs are designed for direct applications. Now, one of CoFounder's core business activities really has been always and continues to be grant writing services. So there is a time when hiring a grant writer makes sense, but it's not every time. And so there are many applications that founders successfully do themselves. And it's a time trade-off, like most things when you're an entrepreneur. I don't know why this green squiggly thing, can you guys see this green squiggle? I have no clue where it's coming from. Anyway, we're just gonna roll with it because it's adding some visual interest. So there are funding programs for every stage of your business, so you don't need to be on the radical end of anything to qualify. So if you're improving existing projects or products or processes, you're adapting, you're experimenting, you're totally radical, you're creating an entirely new market, or you're redefining a category, kind of anything in here will work for you. So it's neat to see where you fit in this, but you definitely don't have to be doing something extreme to qualify. That was part one. There's multiple parts. So we're going to talk about the landscape now and how we can navigate it. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but it is really about filtering and understanding that. So here are the types of innovation funding or funding in general. So there are grants. Grants are kind of the most classical kind of government money, free money that people know about. So they're non-repayable. You never pay it back. They are specific to projects, often innovation projects, but again, in a bigger context here. And they're competitive. So they require an application, and just because you put in an application doesn't really mean that you're going to get it. And so they will adjudicate, they will judge, and they will pick winners to receive the grants. Generally, grants fall into 10K to 5 million. There are micro grants of 5K. I think we're going to show one later today. We've even seen a slightly smaller ones. And there are larger grants too. So the Strategic Response Fund, for example, is 20 million kind of minimum. We just saw a grant called SKIP. I actually forget what the full acronym written out is. But it was for 890 million. But those ones are few and far between and rare, and most grants kind of fall into the 10K to $5 million range. Tax credits, like SHRED, SR&ED, these are entitlements, so they're not competitive. They actually, if you qualify, you will get that money. And so this is why we always like tax credits. And whenever we talk to founders, we always talk about SHRED, because you can get from the federal government 15 to 35% back, and then most provinces have additional funding. So what it really works out to is about 55%, sometimes even a little bit more, of whatever your salary, materials, CapEx spend on innovation back at tax time, cash in the bank. So again, you apply for your tax filing. Most people do get help with SHRED and taxes for obvious reasons, because no one wants to, mess up something with the CRA. When I started my first business, I actually read an accounting book cover to cover because I was like, oh, I'll do it. We have no money. And I did, but as soon as we could afford professional help, that was one area that I highly recommend hiring someone. So it tends to be fairly technical, and the CRA wants things in a certain way, and you can reduce audit risks with doing things in a certain way. However, again, they're entitlements. If you qualify, you are entitled to that money back, and 55% of your innovation spend is a big deal for most companies, startups all the way to large enterprise. Low interest loans. So the government also, especially in recent years, has been doing more and more of these. They are some of the best terms you'll ever get on a loan. They're often 0% interest for 5 years, and then low interest. And then kind of the fourth category that I want to call out here, we have to pay loans back, obviously. The fourth category I want to call out here is the wage and hiring subsidies. So these offset the costs of hiring innovative talent. I actually am in BC, and across Canada, we're having a youth unemployment crisis. Oh, someone cleaned up that thing. Thank you. And it's worse in BC compared to any other province, actually. And so getting youth, that's 15 to 30, in jobs has been really, really difficult. And so there is a lot of funding and a push from the government to make sure that we can get our youth working. So these are the kind of activities, if you're doing these activities, this is where the funding is. So much more important than your industry, your business, etc. These are the activities that grants will help you fund. Hiring. Like I said, youth hiring crisis, we need to get people working. The government wants people employed, paying taxes, having money, spending on the economy. Often, almost always, some amount of hiring funding available. R&D, product development, prototyping, kind of that classical innovation side, absolutely. Market expansion. Obviously, under Carney, we're trying to create a bunch more trade agreements across the world so that we're less reliant on the United States and have kind of that broader space. So there are market expansion opportunities and government money kind of going into that right now. Training and upskilling. So I don't know how many of you read the leaked or official AI for All, the Canadian AI strategy document, but there is going to be a lot of money into training skills, upskilling on our workforce in a changing environment with AI. Clean tech, sustainability, green tech, carbon reduction, all of those things, absolutely. Commercialization. And so we are actually seeing, especially under Carney, actually a big switch from a focus of our grant funding on research and much more into that commercialization and productivity area. Shred's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be around for a long time. So there is still that funding for research, but we're seeing the Carney government in particular heavily invest in commercialization. So they want manufacturing here. They want facilities here. They want us to be robust to tariffs. They are looking for kind of all of those things. The next thing I want to talk about is what governments don't usually fund. And we don't include this slide like to be negasaurus or anything, but it's often just good to understand this so that you're not looking, having browser tabs, using Pocketed, whatever, for grants and these things.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Hi, I have a question.
of course.
So, from your last slide, does it mean that if you're having your business project idea going on, do you have to be like, for example, the international expansion part? Am I supposed to be at that point where I'm right now actively going to do that? That's when I could apply for that type of fund? Or is this could be something that it's a future goal, but near future, you don't know how long, but it's something that you are working towards and you could still get funded already for?
That's a great question. So no government, not no, but by and large, government funding is always future looking, not retroactive. So it's almost impossible. Actually, I think that's one of my first bullets, or one of them. Half projects are retroactive costs here. They're not eligible. So it's always going to be future looking. So to your point, you want to work towards market expansion, international expansion, but you're not there yet. You need to be applying before you're doing the activities that you want funded. So you're kind of right on the money there. That said, almost every single grant in Canada works on a reimbursement basis. So you do have to have an idea of your timing and kind of commit to that in order to receive those funds. So let's say I want to start exporting my goods or services into Ireland. I can apply for funding today to do that within the next year. But I need to, in that application, state how I'm going to do that, have a plan, how we're going to, what we're going to sell, where, what markets, why we think it's a good fit, we have to have details in this application. Then, let's say that the grant funder reviews my application. They're like, yeah, this is a good plan for the next year. Like, this sounds like a great project. We want to fund it. They're going to give me the green light. But they're not going to give me the money that day. I'm going to sign the agreement with them. I'm going to be awarded the funding. I'm going to feel really good, but it's going to work on reimbursement. So whatever I said I was going to do in that plan, I have to show them I did it. Receipts. So you most often have to show your receipts. It's like, yeah, I traveled to Ireland. I bought, paid for legal fees to get my product certified there. I don't think you really need translation in Ireland, but maybe I wanted to translate it into Irish to, get the whole community available. Translation fees, I would have to go and submit those receipts, have already paid for it, and then get it back. Same thing with a hiring grant. So a lot of the hiring grants are open now. They will be for hires that come in September. So you're kind of pre-planning again. I have to know who I'm going to hire and what their role will be to even apply for the grant. Once I do that, I get the green light. Yep, you're going to get the money. I hire the person. They start in September, let's say. They work for me 10 hours a day. I pay them. You have to pay them on payroll. And I have to show the pay stubs to the government to get the subsidy back. So they're always working retroactively, but you have to have the funding approved before you go do those activities for them to count. It's really frustrating for a lot of startups. So a lot of people are like, yeah, if I had the money up front, I wouldn't need this grant. Totally get you. Hard position to be in. From the government's perspective, this is taxpayer money. So if you say you're going to do X with it, they want to see that you did X with it before they give that funding out, which is why it works on reimbursement. That was a very long answer to your very simple question.
No, thank you so much. But that also brings me to my other question. For example, I'm like a student and I don't have that budget for the big project that I'm working on. How am I supposed to pay that person if I don't have that money?
Yeah,
Is there a path that I could take in order to do this? Is there something people do?
it's just hard. So to not have any seed money at all is nearly impossible. So when we first funded Pocketed, we funded it 95% on grants, but that 5% did come from Brianna and I. As a student, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to find grants to fund yourself. So that's true, but you can find a grant to fund someone else, but you would have to have another job, have savings to kind of have that seed money to be able to get that grant to hire some colleagues. There is an exception for students through MyTax. Sometimes it's called MyTax Entrepreneur. So that is one program that I can think of that is currently available where founders can fund themselves if they are students. That might be worth looking into in your case, but it is really specific. Lab to market as well. Yeah, that is a good point. Those tend to be like lab to market tends to be a little bit larger. So they want to see like a little bit larger projects in general. My tax entrepreneur will do a really early stage. There are a couple other ones. Shred, you can get Shred credits back on yourself as an owner. That's true. So there are these little exceptions, but in general, they like to see less funding for the founders themselves and more for this expansion, building, opportunity creation. Is definitely like a larger area of funding. But you're in the hardest point where you need money to make money. There's no money to make money. Your options are your own money, debt, raising capital, or applying for grants, but it is a tough road, and that is a really, really hard spot to be in. And like, I honestly, it's just hard. So on that note, let me go through some more negative things. It won't ever fund really day-to-day expenses. That's not, a super big area of funding. Again, there's exceptions to every rule. During COVID, things were very different. You do see the odd program. So even when I say these, like, it doesn't do this, not saying there's never a program that would do it, but by and large, no. Marketing campaigns and brand building alone, very, very rare. Hard to fund businesses without any employees or payroll. Even the smallest grants of $5,000 to fund student hires, they require payroll. You can think of this as the government wants to fund businesses that are paying taxes, payroll taxes included, and so that is really important. It's difficult to fund an equipment purchase if it's not part of a larger project that hits kind of one of the areas. Defense is another one, dual purpose. It's really big in Canada. So if you're doing something in there, there's often funds right now. Hard to fund ideas that don't have execution or traction yet. And so the bigger you are, the bigger funds you'll qualify for. So we often get people that have really great ideas who come in and say, look, I just need $1 million to get this company off the ground. The government is not the place to do that. So they want to see traction. They want to see revenue. They want to see execution before they really do this. So personal lifestyle businesses, I'm all for that, do that. But if you're not planning to grow and create new opportunities and expand, and you just want to keep your business status quo, which again, good on you, there's just not going to be as many opportunities from government.
Aria, a question came in the chat. What if you don't have payroll but contract employees?
Yes. So you would, if you got you're kind of in a nice position, and here's why. Both businesses I started solely with contractors. It's a great way to do it. As soon as you get a grant, you do need to transition to payroll. There are some really, really easy and cheap payroll tools. It's not scary, I promise you. But the reason I say you're in good shape is obviously you're paying contractors, so good sign. But second, the thing with most hiring grants is it can't be for an existing employee. Although with students, you can find the same student again and again and again. But for a lot of them, you can't. It has to be like a new hire. Even if you've been working with them for 10 years on contract, if they're new to payroll, they are a new hire. And so because for a lot of wage subsidies and hiring grants, you have to already know the person and the role. If you already have a contractor that you really like and they're open to being paid on payroll as well, it can be a really easy transition. You're like, oh, I already have a person. As soon as the grant opens, you're like, I'm hiring this person to do this job. And you can really just kind of slot them in there, but you would have to transition to payroll. However, if that contract employee is doing innovation that is shred eligible, so research and development in a more like technical lens of that, contractors are totally eligible, shred eligible. So you can get, it's not quite as good as like the 55% of a payrolled employee, but you'll get 30% of what you're spending on technical contractors back through shred. So you have to weigh the pros and cons of how much money are you paying them, how much you're going to get back on shred, how much more would you get back on shred, the payroll tax, the time of running payroll, any wage subsidies, etc., to figure out kind of like what is the best scenario for you at that time. But it does position you well to quickly find a hire that was a contractor to shunt over to a hiring grant. So if you're applying to everything instead of filtering for a good fit, stop. You probably just spend all your time applying for grants instead of building a business. You want to spend a portion amount of time on an application for what it's worth. So if an application is worth $5,000, you don't want to spend months on it. If you're writing generically instead of aligning to program goals in the program call, you'll be very unsuccessful in our experience. So it's really about make the funder, the reviewer's job easy. Right? The more you make their job easy, they're like, oh, this project is hitting all of our goals and metrics and criteria. The more you make that easy for them, the more successful you'll be. Don't ignore tax credits. Yes, they're complicated, but tax credits are some of the programs that, for example, we would write totally on success. So we think you're eligible for tax credits and so do you. We'll do all of that work and then we'll take a percentage only of money we get you. And that's not uncommon in the tax credit space either. So don't leave those out. If you're waiting for the perfect program to come along, really you need to think about how the projects that you're already doing and already planning to do could apply to whatever is open now, or keeping an eye on that. That's always a good idea. And you shouldn't treat government funding and grants as a business strategy. You should really see it as an accelerator. This project made sense anyway, but now I can fund it with grants and de-risk it and go even faster. So here's some strategies securing funding. First, you've got to identify them. And so you have to stay on top of them. Again, they're ephemeral. They come up, they go down. That's why we build Pocketed to solve that particular problem. You have to match. So just because the program is open doesn't mean you're eligible. For example, we're going to talk a little bit about exporting your goods and services out of Canada into international markets. For years, the criteria have been you have to have at least $100,000 in previous year's sales and one employee. And what I can tell you is that when those were the criteria, that program gave out all of its money, and most of its money was given out in the first few weeks of the call being open every year. This year, they raised the bar. You have to have 300 grand in sales in your previous year and 3 payrolled employees in the previous year. And what that has done is decrease the number of programs so much that for the first time in, I think it's about 10 years, they've extended the deadline and it's open for longer because there are that many fewer applicants than in previous years with the different thresholds. It's really important that it's aligned to your activity and stage. So really evaluate the eligibility, the timeline, and the effort to payout ratio. So there will be the odd kind of program where you look at it and you're like, man, this is a lot of work for $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000. I think I'm better. My time is better spent as an entrepreneur going out and selling for 15 hours than it is to apply for this grant. That's not always the case. And like anything, the more you do it, it gets faster. But it is always something to think about. Prepare. So make sure you align your narrative to the program objectives and speak their language. So like from pretty early days at Pocketed, we had keywords for every grant kind of listed on the grant pages. And I think that we've undersold that as a feature, but basically you want to use their language. So if they're using the word immigrant, you want to use the word immigrant. Sometimes they use the word newcomer, you want to use the word newcomer, right? And it really depends on which funder is putting out the program. They'll use different words for things, all totally legitimate, all very, acceptable words, except that we want to use the words that they're using and reflect that back to them. If they're saying student internship opportunities, you want to say that. If they're saying student technical leadership, you want to use those words, right? So you want to reflect back your narrative to the words and language and framing that they have. And finally, once you get really good at this and you gotta kind of get it going, you can stack these things. So you will be able to layer programs. So we see people use, Shred as a tax credit. They also use student hiring funds. They also have manufacturing businesses and they're doing that. And so they're getting manufacturing tax credits. And so you can really kind of build these things over time. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some programs. So if you are hiring students, again, you can't hire yourself, but the students do have to be Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or refugees in order to qualify. So if they're here on a working visa, they don't qualify for most grants. They do qualify for SHRED as long as the work is done in Canada legally. It's SHRED eligible. But in terms of hiring grants, you do have to be Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or refugee. So they are currently accepting applications for summer hires. It's starting to close, but definitely some of these we're starting to see open for fall hires as well. So you get about $5,000 per new hire every 4 months. And again, you can hire the same student again and again and again, which means, and it pays 50% of their salary. So you're paying 50 cents on the dollar. That's great. You could actually shred the other 50 cents. So you can't double dip, but let's say you pay someone $40,000 across the year and they're a student, you can get $20,000 back because you fund them 3 times, 15 grand. Let's say you pay them 30 grand across the year because we're going to make this math example easy. You pay them 30 grand across the year. You can do this grant 3 times a year. So you're getting 15 grand back from the government. So now all of a sudden you've out of pocket at the end of the year, you're 15 grand out of pocket. And if they were doing innovation work that's SHRED eligible, that $15,000 that you were out of pocket that the grant did not cover, that's SHRED eligible. So you'll get 50% of that back as well. So now you're paying effectively 25 cents on the dollar, which is really, really efficient. The next one I talked about export SMEs. So this deadline was the end of March. And again, because they raised the bar, the deadline is now the end of August. So it's a huge extension. And again, really kind of shows what big change they made with those increasing criteria. But if you are exporting internationally, this is a great program. It also opens year after year. So to the earlier question, if you know that you are going to expand into new markets next year, this is a good one to have in the back of your head. You're like, look, I'm going to do, so this one goes until the end of the fiscal year. So end of April, government fiscals. But if you're like, no, I think next summer I'm going to do this, then next spring, you're going to apply to this program. So these are cyclical programs, and it's always good to know that they're coming and when they're likely coming so that you can make use of them when you're ready. It's up to $50,000 and it funds 50% of your costs. So if you're going to spend $100,000 on market expansion, you can get the full $50,000. You don't have to do a project that big. And it can be a great way to fund travel and translation. This year in particular, in addition to the increased criteria that I mentioned, they've also moved away from expansion into the US. And so what we're seeing is that applications that are not into the US are more successful. And the ones that are successful as expansion into the US are defense related or dual use related. Intellectual property, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about this, but the Canadian government wants IP to be built here and stay here, and they want Canadians to protect it. Unlike, some other countries, Canadians actually don't patent and legally protect their IP nearly as much as some other nations. We don't tend to be as litigious either, as there are a lot of cultural reasons for that. But the government would like to see that change. And so to do that, they are funding a lot of different IP programs. This is an example of one. They're available in most provinces. They kind of come and go, but the funding has been replenished. And so you can start to see more money for this. So it'll pay 80% of your legal costs as it relates to IP up to $100,000. And the great thing about it is you can kind of tier it. So just because you're not going to spend that much money today, you could do a small project and then bigger and bigger and bigger over the course of years until you hit that lifetime 100K threshold. So if you are, trademarking, copywriting, you want to learn what the heck are the difference between those things and patents. They actually have courses that are free that you can take to learn that. They encourage Canadian businesses to develop IP strategies. So if you're like, I don't even know where to start, often you can get funding for that as well. So that then when you're going to raise with investors, perhaps that's the kind of the path you're doing. Yeah, so if you kind of follow this, you'll get to different provinces and then you can find the different courses. So they're different in different provinces. But they kind of come and go, and they're pretty good. IRAP too. If you haven't heard of IRAP, Google IRAP, call them. If you're doing a tech-based company, IRAP is really tech-focused. It's good to have a relationship with an IRAP representative. So we always encourage people to do that as well. They have money, they have resources, they have support, mentorship, all sorts of things. But protecting your IP is really important. And if you are going to go and raise money, and again, it's not the only way to build a business, I fully recognize that. But if you are, investors are going to ask you, what's your IP strategy? And so if you can use a grant to have a really great IP strategy, you can say, oh, well, here's the top line, like overview, you have it on a back deck slide. If you want to see the full thing, it'll be in the diligence package. Like that is a great answer, and you can get that 80% funded. I've already talked a lot about the Scientific Research and Experimental Development SHRED SRNED program. Again, if you are spending money on this, it's an entitlement, and I really encourage you to learn more and apply. You can do up to 18 months post the end of your fiscal year for a claim. And so you actually have a fair bit of time to claim costs. And so even if you're like, oh shoot, I didn't do it last year and I already filed my taxes for this year, it's actually not too late to do an amendment this summer, as an example, and then get that tax return separate from your regular tax filing. Okay, so now I want to talk about a couple of companies that have used grants in really innovative ways. So this is a media company, and we were actually able to get them a couple different programs. And so one of them being training for themselves. So they wanted to train to use new equipment and position themselves into new markets. And they were also actually eligible for a digital media tax credit as well. So that's because you're not, so there are other tax credits as well, digital media, manufacturing, lots of clean technology. If you're doing anything in those spaces, in addition to SHRED, there's other opportunities there too. This is a beverage company, actually very cool. A group of co-founders have a very cool beverage that we're not allowed to name, but it's good. And they got their first order at Costco, such a big milestone for them. But what they realized is that they couldn't physically do it. And so they hired a team of 5 or 6 students to come in for the summer to help them fulfill this Costco order in hopes that it will become permanent. And they did. So they scaled up their team really quickly. They got that 50% subsidy for the team. And they ended up keeping 4 out of them full-time and permanently when the Costco foray went so well that they are now permanently in Costco. As a really cool success story of exactly what grants are for. Need to accelerate, de-risk this opportunity with Costco. They de-risked it with grants. They hired youth. They created jobs. They helped the economy grow. And then some of the students were so good and it was such a good fit, they kept them as permanent opportunities and permanent jobs. And so again, this is why that's such a success story for grants and from the government's perspective. This is a cool company that we work with that has gotten several $1 million. And so they've done some big ocean supercluster projects to the tune like $3, $4, $5 million. They've done export funding, a lot of hiring funding. And so they are really innovative. Saran wrap or like cling wrap. So they're developing that, but from algae. And so it's biodegradable. It's, doesn't have microplastics. And they can kind of do it at scale and economically efficiently. So very, very cool. And so they kind of hit a whole bunch of areas. Yes, it's innovation and R&D. They have big shred claims. Yes, it's ocean tech. It's clean tech. It's sustainability. It helps with plastics. So they are hitting on a lot of different government priorities. And then they're able to take advantage of a lot of money as well. Okay, so there were some different handouts in the chat. So they're HTMLs and they should be interactive. So if you actually don't just click the link, download it like a Word doc, like you would a Word doc, and then click it and it should open in any browser. And they should be kind of clickety and do some fun things. So this is an experiment. I was just saying that I've only ever done with these quizzes one time before, and it was in person. And so the way it worked was everyone scanned a QR code at the table and it brought it up on their phone. I thought that would be weird in a webinar because everyone's on their computer and then you have to do your phone, or if you're watching on your phone. So I was like, I don't know, that seems like too many screens and devices, but very open to feedback. But give it a try and see if you can kind of fill it out. Yeah, thank you. Let's see if that works. So you should be able to kind of run the questions and score yourself a little bit. Name the activity that you're doing, see if you think it's worth it, and then it'll kind of give you a verdict. I was saying that it was very inspired from, this is dating myself too, which is fine, but the old school Cosmo quizzes. And so if you remember those or you're kind of into those, it's kind of like that. It'll give you a verdict. It'll be like, right now, later, it's not for me yet. There is no right or wrong answer here, right? So if you really kind of get to the point where it's like, look, grants probably aren't for you yet, a quick no is often a good thing. As long as you understand, once I do these things, I'm doing these activities, I hit these milestones, grants are going to be for me. That is a win. It means you understand when the time investment's there, when the opportunity is there, and when the moment to take advantage of it is. And also, here's the thing, you have a file, so you can do this whenever you want. But hopefully there's a little bit fun. And we've kind of been playing with some of these fun quizzes. There's another one that's the funding readiness checklist. And so really this was developed because I like to automate and use a lot of different kind of cool new tools, but it was actually developed out of a lot of work with transcripts from talking to early stage founders. And so really what we did was mine a lot of data to say, what are the key critical questions and things that need to be true about your business in order to be generally eligible for funding or more highly eligible for funding? Again, there's always going to be these niche programs or smaller programs that you can apply for and you're ready for. But when do you become really grant ready? And so we kind of developed a couple of different things here. So eligibility signals that tell us yeah, you're ready, and tell you, yes, you're ready to pursue government funding. I have enough traction. I have kind of the things in place, the framework the government likes to see to be successful, as well as some red flags. And again, it's good to know about the red flags and what isn't what is gonna be a hindrance? What needs to be true or what needs to not be true in order, it should be in the chat there. Yeah. In order to decide to pursue funding or not. It takes about 2 minutes. It tallies your score. And this one's a stoplight kind of thing where it's like green, move forward now, yellow, explore cautiously, and red, revisit later when more things are true or some of those red flags and barriers have been removed. Okay, so I was hoping we could have a little bit of a discussion. I see we have 8 minutes left. So I think maybe because you talk a lot, what we'll do is I'll kind of go through some of the final slides and then we'll take the last little bit here to really answer specific questions, like we said. So again, in summary, if you're going to apply on your own, be prepared, read the program guide, align it to their goals, and quantify everything. If you're hiring 3 people, say it. Don't say we're making some hires. Oh, we plan to hire. I'm going to create 3 new jobs, right? Like that's a more compelling sentence than like, hey, we plan to hire. If the goal is to increase revenue by 40%, say that. Show it. They love a measurable impact and they love to know that you've made a model, you've run a model, you know your numbers. Like on Dragon's Den, which is like a controversial show, so take that for what it is. But and they're like, you don't know your numbers, and they're like yelling at the entrepreneur, and it's like very dramatic. Overly dramatic, and know your numbers. It'll make your application a lot stronger. And then the framing matters. And so, for example, if you're saying like, oh, we build software, you might want to say things depending on the program. Again, it's like, we're actually developing a proprietary technology that enables blah, 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 right? So there are just some ways to kind of tune things to make them more eligible or more compelling. Like a good pitch, like good storytelling, like a good joke, right? Like it's all about that narrative. So again, don't forget to start with tax credits when you can, add wage subsidies, apply for the grants, and build a pipeline. So treat funding like sales, top of funnel down. That everyone who comes in your door is not going to be your customer, but you need a wide amount of customers before you can make the money you want. Same thing here. Look at the opportunities and narrow them down to the ones that make sense. It's not about finding free money. It's about de-risking and accelerating the work you're already doing. And as soon as you make that mindset shift, you will become more successful in the funding. I was already going to innovate. I was already going to build. I was already going to hire. I already was sustainability focused. Fantastic. Those activities that you're going to do, let's go de-risk them and let's accelerate them. So that is the way really to think about a lot of these programs. Okay, so if you're ready now, you can create an account, bookmark resources. If you're not sure, check your eligibility. Take a look around. If you're like, yeah, I'm ready, I want to pursue big programs, I've been innovating, I should have been collecting shred credits, I want to go back and retroactively do it for a couple of years, let's get that going, right? So there are a lot of different places to be, all okay. And the thing is, if you're further down the road, you weren't always. And so I find entrepreneurs to be usually pretty generous with their time, and they get how hard it is, and especially in those really, really early stages. Again, it never gets easy, but you do have different problems. And different things keep you up at night. So you can make a free account, actually. So it'll be free for this account. There's a sneak peek, but we have a brand new platform coming up that I'm really excited about. It's much more beautiful. It's more powerful. It has a lot of embedded AI. It has continuous searches in it, lots of education. I'm really, really excited for it to come out. It will come out later this year. But if you already create an account and you have it for free, you'll get that new account for free as well when it does launch. So I encourage everyone to poke around. You can reach us at hello@hellopocketed.io. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'll put my contact information in the chat as well. So you can always shoot me an email.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aria. This was amazing. And so before we get into the Q&A, we'll just share a couple of things on the innovation cluster side. And then we do have amazing workshops coming up over the next few months. In July, we are hosting a workshop on entering Canada's defense market. It's a very big topic at the moment. So this workshop is designed to help companies understand how Canada buys defense and security products and services, who the key decision makers are, and how procurement works in practice. So if you scan the QR code on the screen, that'll take you to our events page where you can register for that. That's taking place on July 29th.
Absolutely. And if you are going to enter defense and dual use, you should also give me an email because there is funding for that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And if you found today's workshop valuable, we would truly appreciate a Google review. So feel free to scan the QR code on the screen to share your feedback. It really means a lot to us. We will be sharing the recording after as well. So feel free to rewatch the recording and if you need anything. And yeah, if you are wanting or if you're building a tech business, we'd be happy to connect. So the Innovation Cluster is here to help founders like you grow with purpose from MVP stage to scale up. I know there were some questions earlier that came in the chat, but if there's other questions, feel free to unmute yourself. We'll just go back here. Yeah, here's a question. What are eligible expenses eligible for market expansion funding? Kindly provide a few resources of funding sources.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just going to put this so I can see more people. Okay, so Account Expert is a big one for sure. There are some market expansion ones through my tax as well. So I'll put that here. IRAP has, I'm just putting the words in there so you can Google them. They'll all be unpocketed as well. IRAP has some market expansion opportunities as well. There are some specific export funding in the agri-food processing and value-add agri-food industry as well right now. I saw a question there, are we working for Deloitte? Yes, we sold pocketed to Deloitte last year. It's been just over a year. So now we're pocketed a Deloitte business and we are owned by Deloitte.
So important market expansion funds needed in our industry, which is their company's medical device, is regulatory requirements to get licensed to export to specific region or country like FDA or USA or ISO 13485 and CE for Europe. What are options to get funding for this segment? We are at this stage currently.
Yeah, so I would look at Tri-Council in university collaborations. Can Export currently opens. If you meet the qualifications, they'll help pay for some of that as well. There is also a new fund that was announced earlier this year called the Life Sciences Fund. It has no calls, is brand new. They are hoping to have their first call in the fall. Could be early winter, but could be the fall. They anticipate it'll be the fall. And when they say life sciences, they mean human health very specifically, which I always kind of take offense to as someone who did life sciences, not in human health. But it is very human health centric. So if you're doing a medical device, it's going to fit well. And so I would look for that fund. I might even suggest going on the Life Sciences Fund website, pull their contact and ask to talk with them. They right now are taking a lot of calls. Funders in general love to chat with businesses, so I always encourage people to do that. But Life Sciences Fund right now is really looking to talk to the community and ask what their needs are. So, for example, if you get on the call and say, great, these are the things we're struggling to find funding for and that are barriers to our excellent med tech opportunity here, there is an opportunity right now. It's not lobbying, it's not that strong, but there's an opportunity to give them feedback that they are actively incorporating into their calls. And so I would really encourage you to reach out to them at this early stage for sure. Okay, AI. There was this big fund last year called ACAF, the AI Access Compute Fund, and it funded, I think the minimum was $100,000, up to $3 million in AI credits, like your Anthropic bill, your Gemini bill, whatever. And it was great. It came really quickly and closed really quickly. But we anticipate ACAF 2.0 to open this summer. So we actually, last year, so past behavior being the best predictor of future behavior, it opened early July, closed late July. Big applications, $3 million, it should be. But we anticipate it to open at a similar time. So we're thinking it will open in the next few weeks here and fund credits again. Our hypothesis, again, based on everything from emails to rumors to conversations, is that it will fund AI compute in Canada, so sovereign AI, and kind of in that same funding envelope. Till we actually get the details, that's the speculation. And so that is something else. Um, yes, there is an agri-tech. Well, there's several. So, I mean, look at Pocket, they come and go. But there is the Agri Innovate Fund. So the AI CAF is not currently open, but we think it will be. So that's kind of that's one big thing. Agri Innovate, they have so many programs. Agri Innovate program is on the platform, so I don't always have them right here, but it is for exporting into new markets. There is one specifically for that. Food security is a big deal with the government right now, and so it is always nice to be a part of that for sure. There is the other big AI one that I wanted to mention. It will open in the fall again, so now is the time to start talking about these things. Is the Scale AI program. Those projects need to be $3 to $50 million in size, and it has to be a consortia. And so if you are building an AI business and there's a project that requires multiple companies coming together where the sum is greater than the part, now is the time to put that a consortium together and project plan and get the group aligned so that you would be ready to apply for that $3 to $10 million grant in the fall. And so we always tell people, especially with consortium-based grants and those larger grants, knowing what you want to apply for, or knowing ahead of time the project and that you're going to apply is absolutely important. And so those are kind of big ones coming out shortly.
Amazing. So we are a little bit over time. We will share all the links that we've shared throughout the workshop today. And then any other kind of resources we'll share afterwards as well in the wrapped email. But Aria, thank you so much for today's workshop. It was excellent. Thanks everybody for your amazing questions and everything. We are over time. But if you do have specific questions for Aria, she did share her email in the chat, and I can also share that in the email as well if you want to reach out for specific questions.
Okay.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.